Okay, so we're recording. We're gonna go ahead and get started. Just a little bit of background on Slicer for those of you who like may not have heard of it. This is pretty much a tool that allows you to segment the body, taking CT scans and just isolating different body parts and then exporting them as any sort of object file. So this is primarily useful if you are taking, CT scans and want to either model and design, hey, like different defects, or I know we have our kidney team that does this, and I know cardiothoracic has done this a little bit as well. I'm not sure if surgical has, maybe. But yeah, it's just a super great skill to learn if you ever find yourself with some CT scans and want to either model or 3D print some stuff. So when it comes to what we're actually going to be doing today, okay, wait, let me share something else actually. I'm going to share what will hopefully end up being the final product of what we make. And we are doing, hold on, livers today, which, surprise, surprise, you guys are probably like, why the heck are we doing livers? That's mainly for two reasons. One, because I've done tutorials on both hearts and kidneys already. And so if you guys want the links to that, I can totally send that out after this as well, if you were specifically interested in learning how to segment either hearts or kidneys. And two, we may end up doing livers in the near future. And so it's just yeah, this is it. It's a little quick, dirty, nothing too crazy. But that should be what we end up getting at the end of this. So just to get started, if anyone wants to follow along, you don't have to, obviously, but if you do want to follow along, we're going to be using one of the sample data sets that comes with 3D Slicer. So we're going to be using the CTA cardio data set. So if you click on this here, you'll notice that a bunch of screens pop up, and the layout of this is pretty much just the different views. I don't know if you guys necessarily know the planes of the body, but we have our oh boy, let me see if I remember this. I think this is our axial view at the top, our coronal view on the bottom left, and the sagittal view on the bottom right. So just good to know if you're going to be I guess referencing things and like which views you're going to be working in. I primarily like to work in the coronal view for pretty much all segmenting that I do, but really it kind of just depends on like what body part you're going to be segmenting. So first things first, where the heck even is the liver, right? Like it's super weird body part, like it's probably like around the stomach area, but how do we actually know what in all of this mess is the liver and what's the rest? You guys can probably tell by the fact that this is named CTA cardio, that this file is primarily used for heart segmentations. And this was actually the same file that I used in one of my previous workshops where we segmented the heart. But it's a little just tough to see what we're gonna want from this. So I can tell you right now, if you just do like a quick Google search and you're just like, hey, where's the liver? You'll find out that it's actually a little hard to see, but it's kind of like this structure right here. And so this is what we're going to be primarily working towards segmenting. And another reason that I chose the liver for this workshop is because it's really, really hard to tell that this is the liver. The lines between what is and isn't the liver is really hard to see. And one of the fun ways that Slicer works is that, especially for one of the bigger steps, which is the grow from seed steps, they asked me, which is primarily going to do most of the heavy lifting for us. That works by taking the differences in color and using those to segment stuff out. So if Slicer doesn't necessarily see a whole lot of difference in color, like here, it's not really going to know what is and isn't liver. So the first step that we're going to do before we start any of this is actually to edit this file a little bit to make the liver more visible so we can more clearly see what we're working with. So I'm going to go ahead and just double click this, just make sure that it's all loaded in. And from here, we can go to this top little bar here and click DICOM. And this is where we're going to be able to see our things again, but this little sidebar here is what we're going to be using. I might just open cardio 1. It shouldn't really matter which one you do, as long as you use the same one throughout this workshop. So right away, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to right click it and I'm going to click edit properties. And then from here, I'm actually going to go, oh, so it's in display right now. And so these are just a bunch of different ways that you can view the exact same CT scans. So if I were to click this, it would make it all super weird, kind of pretty, kind of feels like you're in like a rave. I don't know, but not super useful to us because we want the liver to be more clear and I can't tell what anything is here. So pretty much what we're just going to be doing, we're just going to be going around and figuring out which one makes the liver the clearest out of these options. And this is pretty subjective. You can toy with this. It doesn't, I don't have like a right answer for like what's the best one to pick. And even like within ones, you can edit these little things at the bottom and figure out what you think makes it look best. So that's exactly what I'm going to do. I'm just going to put mine to different contrasts. Excuse me, scroll through it, try to just make sure that I'm looking at the right thing. And again, we're kind of looking at this like liver looking structure here. If you want to look up a picture of a liver, if you aren't super familiar with the shape, feel free to. But yeah, so I'm gonna just edit this a little bit, try to get it as clear as I can. Again, it's not going to be perfect, and it won't need to be perfect, so you don't have to worry too much about making it like super clear. But yeah, another tool up here is actually just to manually increase or decrease the brightness. So if I just click this instead of my mouse here, I'm just in this little tool, and then I click and I scroll up or down, I can increase or decrease the contrast that way. And you can actually see on the left-hand side this shift over here. So again, just different tools you can use. I don't want to spend too much time on this, but yeah, okay. So I'm gonna go to this one and just make it, I think that's at least a little better in my opinion. So I'm going to use that. So from here, you can go back into DICOM and just even comparing it. This is what we started with. This is what we ended with. You can see the liver's a lot clearer. Most things in this are just a lot clearer. And so I think we're finally ready to start segmenting. So from this step, if you right click the files or the I guess the data that you want to segment and then go to segment this, or if you've selected it, you can just go up here and go to segment editor. But sometimes that gets weird, so I'm just gonna right click it and do segment this. Now this is where we're actually going to be doing the vast majority of the work that we're doing today. So I alluded to this before, but we have a grow from seeds tool, and that's really what's going to be doing, like I said, most of the work for us. So the way this works is that you are going to define different sections of what you're segmenting, and then you are going to define an everything else kind of section. So for example, if we click this add button right here, and then we want to add a segment, I'm just going to call this liver. Then we would, anytime we want to specify what is the liver, we would want to make sure that this right here is selected, and that any of the tools we use are being used for liver. And so we're also always going to want to create this other segment as well. And this is for us to be able to tell Slicer what isn't liver and what isn't what we want to segment. And a fun thing is you don't have to have these two. For this workshop, we're going to keep it pretty simple. So you don't need more than these two segments. But if you're doing something like the heart, that's a lot more complicated and you may want to separate some of the like areas of it, then you would, want to maybe add a few more and be like, left heart, right heart, aorta, all that fun stuff. But for now, again, going to keep it simple. We're going to do liver. And liver and other will be all that we need. So from here, we're pretty much just going to go through and we're going to briefly tell Slicer what we want to be liver and what we don't want to be liver. And the fun thing about Slicer is that it's really smart. You don't have to do a whole lot of manual work. So when it comes to actually just doing our side of this, it becomes pretty easy to do. So I'm going to select this paint tool, and that's going to literally allow me to paint wherever I want. So if I want to draw like a star across here, I can do that. and no one's going to stop me. But I don't want to do that because I have liver selected and not all of that is liver. So we really just want to paint over briefly what is and isn't liver. So I'm going to start kind of at the beginning here. I can see it start kind of peeking through. So I'm not even going to have to fill anything in or anything crazy. I'm going to keep it pretty simple. Again, we're just, it's called grow from seeds because you're literally just planting little seeds of color every few slices, just about where you think the liver is when it comes to that view. So again, you don't have to be super precise. You don't have to get like the full boundary or anything like that. Just again, planting those kind of minor seeds, making sure that your outline is fairly decent. And don't worry too much if you're a little unsure about things at this stage. It still is pretty hard to see what is and isn't liver. And so, you know, don't get like too discouraged if you see something like this and you're like, I have no idea what this is, you know, like, is this not? There will be plenty of time to fix that down the line. So right now, just focus on what you are sure is liver. If there's something that you aren't sure is liver, just leave it alone for now. Don't touch it. So we're just going to keep on going, and I'm just going to kind of speed through this a little bit. This step is typically pretty quick. So you don't want to spend too much time on the grow from seeds. Again, it can be pretty messy. Slicer's smart, and you know, we'll be able to correct things down the line. So, yep, kind of just I'm not super sure if this is liver, to be honest, but I'm gonna grab it anyway. Why not? And then we're just gonna keep on going. Still using this same method until we're done. Yeah. And so like this here is also like a great example. I have no idea what that is. Like that could be anything, you know? So it's super hard to tell. So I'm not gonna touch it. I'm just gonna leave that alone. Say Slicer knows more about anatomy than I know. So I will let it make the decision for me. So boom, that. I'm just going to skip forward a few more slices. Again, this doesn't have to be super specific. So if you skip a lot of slices at once, that's more than okay. It doesn't have to be super like all together. And I think that's about liver, and that's all I'm gonna take. So now that we've done what is liver, we want to go and we want to select our other segments, and we're going to do the same thing. We're just going to go backwards now, where we're going to just specify what isn't liver. So I still have the paint tool selected, and I'm just going to go across, and I'm going to just, nothing out here is liver. And then if I'm going into this, I'm going to say, when it comes to all in here, what is and isn't liver, not super sure. So again, just going to tackle the places that I can make a somewhat clear distinction what is and isn't, you know. And just going to do that over here as well. And if you end up painting over something, so let's say I just did this and I was like, oh shoot, that's liver. I don't want to paint over that. You can either Control Z or you can come over here to erase, and you can just erase it. One thing I will say, just be careful when you're painting and erasing to make sure you have the correct one selected. I've definitely been in cases before where I had the wrong one selected, and I would either get super confused on what was happening, or I would just totally mess up my my structure here. So yeah, just something to keep in mind kind of throughout the process. So we definitely don't want that heart creeping in there. So I'm definitely going to put a big old line through that is not liver. And just all around there. We don't really want all that noise. Try to make it clean. Again, don't know what that is. I'm not going to touch it. And I might make this a little more clear that there's a line like right here, like none of this bone stuff. None of that is, I don't even know if that's bone. Whatever that white stuff is, we don't want it. Get it out of here. So again, going to skip around a little bit. just get as much as I can. Sweet. Okay, we should be getting close to the edge. That's probably fine. And I mean, even now, I'm being pretty generous about how much I'm telling Slicer what is and isn't stuff. You really don't have to be this meticulous about it. I know some people who will just go in and that their growth from seed steps, they'll put like 3 or 4 seeds throughout the whole thing. But I don't know. I think it ends up saving a little bit of time if you're just like a little more careful. And so especially this kidney that's poking out here, we definitely want to tell it that that is not kidney. Because yeah. Okay. And I'm just gonna continue. We're really starting to get towards the end now. Sweet. Get that kidney out of here. Spine is not kidney. Who'd have thought? All right. That bit, that bit, that bit. And let's wrap it up over here. And I'm just gonna go. So once I see that there's, you know, I guess ribs, maybe, probably, crossing this, I know I don't want to take anything past this point, so I'm just gonna shade over the whole thing in other over here. Okay, so scrolling through, we have our liver segments, we have our other segments, and I think it's about time that we can do the grow from seed step. That'll get some of that heavy lifting out of the way for us so we don't have to go in manually. Again, important step, I'm going to select liver, not other. So selecting liver, I'm going to click grow from seeds. And then for right now, I'm only going to click initialize, and your computer's going to take a hefty break while everything renders. And then we're going to see things light up green and yellow, and that'll tell us what is and isn't segmented as liver or other. So yeah, my slicer says it's not responding. It does that sometimes. I'm hoping it doesn't crash. One thing I will definitely recommend is to save your work. I totally should have saved this before doing this step. Slicer is a pretty hefty program, and so it will often get tired and make your computer tired. And sometimes it doesn't like that, and it'll just quit on you. But we're gonna cross our fingers, and I'm gonna say that if it doesn't crash, I will save my work immediately. So, okay, sweet. All right, so it didn't crash. Now you can see there's like this yellow box and this green stuff that is everything Slicer thinks is liver around it. And I lied. I'm not going to save anything. I like to live on the edge. Yeah, so now that we have this, we can pretty clearly see that I think Slicer did an okay job at segmenting this liver. But it is still pretty hard to tell just from these two-dimensional views. Like I do see a few instances of error, but when it comes down to it, I'm not really too sure what everything looks like in the 3D view yet. So now, before we click apply, so we don't want to click apply yet because then that's going to solidify our changes, and we want to edit this before we finalize our grow from seeds. So I'm going to go up here to segmentation, and I'm going to click the data that I'm working with, and it'll be segmentation preview. So if I click that, and then I go to segmentations, and then I click this closed surface button, that's going to create a preview of the liver for me. And it is going to look terrible. It looks so bad. Like, what is that? What on earth? You're probably thinking, man, I thought I was doing a good job. This looks terrible. But don't worry, we're going to fix it. It's going to turn out better by the end of it. So right away, you can see there's all this stuff. There's a huge section here that, like, I don't even know what that is. Like stomach, maybe? Who knows? And then there's like a lot of noise on the outside. Looks like some missing pieces, some chunks taken out of it. So again, before we click, what's it called? Apply on that grow from seeds, we're just going to edit things a little bit. So we're going to keep that 3D thing previewed, but we're going to go back to our segmentation. And then from segmentations at the top, we're going to go back to segment editor. Whoops. Okay. So in segment editor as well, I guess we'll also need to click segmentation. So we don't want to be in the preview anymore. And then from here, we're just going to take a look and we're going to be like, something's not right. Where's like this nasty area? And so a fun thing you can do is in the 3D view, if you if you press shift and then hover over the area that is looking pretty bad, it'll go to where that is in your two-dimensional views. So in my two-dimensional views, I can see, all right, this is probably whatever this green stuff is. It's counting that as liver when it should not be liver. That's like, I don't even know, but we don't want it, whatever it is. So from here, you can go into your other thing, reselect the paint tool, and then just paint right over the stuff that you don't want to include. And because we haven't finished the grow from seeds yet, if I just take this section and I just paint over this part right here, it's going to then update a new initialized grow from seeds based on what now it thinks is liver and not liver. So as you can see, maybe I'll go back and do that again. So if I undo that on our 3D view, oh man. So in our 3D view, it's messy. If I redo it, well, not a whole lot of that stuff went away, but that's okay. That just means maybe we'll do a little bit more cleaning up around here. So I can see there's more of that green here. So I'm gonna just cover that, take that away, say, hey, get that out of here. We don't like that. So it's getting a little cleaner. It's still pretty rough. So let's see if we can take a little more out of that before we start finalizing things. So I'm just gonna go through that. And one thing to note is that it's never gonna be clean. At this stage, there's just not. It's just not going to happen. So it'll always look a little wacky at this stage, but we do. One thing I do see as well is we want to fix some of these gaps here because that is liver and it's not counting that as what we want. So instead of selecting the other, I'm going to select liver now. I'm going to make my also, if you're following along, to change the size of your brush, you can select shift and then scroll on your mouse, and that'll change the size. I think that's a super helpful tip. So just gonna select that there because yeah, that looks more right. And then I'm gonna go down here as well and select this little area right here. And that looks pretty solid too. Again, not perfect, but there are going to be so many other tools that are going to help us perfect it. Up here, same thing. We want all of that stuff. So we're going to select that. Nice. Okay. I'm going to run through this super quick. Again, for this tutorial, I'm not going to get too crazy into the edits at this stage, just because, you know, it's just a tutorial. But if you were doing this, I would recommend taking just a little bit of time to kind of just go through, make sure the stuff that you want to be selected is selected and the stuff that you don't want to be selected is not selected. But for now, this will produce a decent enough liver. We can scroll through it one last time, be like, you know what? Yeah, I could see it's like starting to come out. Then it gets into that like weird liver shape and then disappears into nothingness, right? And we love that. So now I'm going to say, all right, it's time. I'm ready. I'm going to apply grow from seeds, and that's going to make these changes solidified. So if I were to undo grow from seeds at this stage, I would have to redo the entire process to get this back. So again, really just want to emphasize, I would recommend not clicking apply until you're certain that what you got is what you want. Okay, that's disgusting, right? Super messy, super gross, but generally, because we know it's a liver, we can probably be like, yeah, that's a liver. But I think if anyone else were to see this, they would have no idea what it is. So now comes my favorite step where everything starts to become just like a lot more clearer in terms of what it is. And that's going to be the smoothing step. So this, I'm just like a little disclaimer. This is going to depend a lot on what you're doing this for. Smoothing can often be either really overdone or underdone. And I typically err on the side of underdoing smoothing, primarily because a lot of what I use 3D Slicer for is thanks, Izzy. But yeah, primarily what I use 3D Slicer for is 3D printing. What's it called? These body parts, primarily kidneys. And so when it comes out of the 3D printer, I know that I'm going to have to post-process it anyway. I'm going to have to sit there and I'm going to have to sand it down and, clean up any of the imperfections along the way. So I don't want to waste too much time on this step just because it might not be worth it. But if, for instance, you were taking the STL files, like for cardiology, if you did this with a heart and then you wanted to display those heart segments in like a web application or something like that, where you'd want it to look pretty and you want it to look beautiful, then I'd recommend going a lot heavier on the smoothing because you'd want it to look more perfect. So again, just totally depends on your application. For this, I'm going to go pretty heavy on the smoothing because I'm going to say for this, we'll want it to look pretty. Why not? Or at least prettier. So I typically go with a Gaussian smoothing kernel. Median's also not too bad, but it's a little on the lighter side. And especially if we want to get pretty into it, I like to choose Gaussian. The math behind all these, I gotta be honest, I probably can't tell you too much about it all. But I mean, if you know what Gaussian smoothing is, it's I guess enough to kind of sort of understand what's going on. But okay, and then the standard deviation, you can kind of think of this as like just as like intensity. I guess that's probably as best as I can describe it, is just like how much do you want each like instance of your kernel to cover. And so for this, it's 3 millimeters. So if I were to apply this now, it would barely do anything, especially because the liver is a pretty large structure. It's once my thing stops spinning, yeah, you can see it still looks weird. Like that is still wonky. It's better, but not by a whole lot. So if I'm doing a kidney, I'll typically keep my standard deviation for my smoothing somewhere between 2 and 3, just because it's a smaller structure. It has a lot less imperfections, and so it doesn't need as much smoothing. But for this, I'm going to bump it up. So let's say I go something crazy. Like, let's say I'm like, you know what? 24. Like let's smooth the heck out of this, and then we can show you what over smoothing looks like. And this is going to take a while. I just realized maybe 24 was a little much. I'm not sure if my computer can handle that, but we're going to see what happens. Oh boy. And now I'm wishing I saved it. Dang it. Let's see. I guess this is a good time for questions. Anyone who's following along, do you guys have any questions right now? Yes. Sorry, go ahead. Oh, yeah. So once you've finished your grow from seeds, if you click this show 3D button, then it should display the 3D section. You just press the button. Yeah. And if it doesn't show up, try zooming out, because I don't know why this is. Slicer's a little odd, but sometimes your like object will just be like way over here, and you're just like, what the heck? So yeah, sometimes you gotta find it a little bit. It's tricky. If you still don't see it, let me know, and I'll try to help out. But for now, what the heck is this? This could be anything. Like this is way over smooth. So it's just an example that we wanna find a nice medium between over smoothing, under smoothing. So I'm gonna toy around a little bit with this. I'm gonna say let's see what 5 looks like. And while I'm doing this, I will also say that another good thing about smoothing at this step is that if you were to then change things manually, it would automatically apply the smoothing filter on whatever you change. Yeah, just making sure there were no comments or chat things. So okay, again, looks a little better. Because we're trying to make this a little prettier, I'm gonna say I might smooth it a little bit more, just because it's still a little ugly, but this looks a lot better than how it started. So I might bump this up to just like 6.5, and we'll see if that is good enough. Again, all this is pretty subjective. So yeah, kind of just depends on your application. Okay. I'm gonna say that I'm happy with that. I think that looks okay. I think it's pretty good. There are a few imperfections, but instead of doing those, or instead of trying to like smooth those away or anything like that, I think I'm actually going to just try to edit those manually. And that is going to be the next and pretty much final step that we have until we're ready to export our STL file. So from this step, we're just going to go. Also, were you able to get it to show up? Oh no. Okay. Let me know what happens once the circle of death is gone. That's rough. But yeah, okay. So from this step, pretty much you're just going to be going in and identifying the places that you don't like and filling them in slice by slice. So again, this is probably the step that it can take the longest if you want it to. Or I got to be honest, recently I've just been skipping it because again, I just will manually like post process these models. So if they're like a little rough, I'll just sand that out because it's what I'm going to have to do anyway. But for this, I'll at least demonstrate a little bit like something that we might want to do, but won't spend too much time on it. So right over here, I see, okay, like little divots weird. Like I don't think it's really supposed to have a gap right there. And I know we tried to kind of target that section to grow from seeds, but it looks like it didn't really get all of it. So I'm gonna want to go in and just fill that in just like a little bit. So how do I go about finding it? Similar thing, if you hold shift and then hover over the spot that you want, it'll bring you to where you are. And then if I were to select my paint tool, I don't know if you guys can see it in the top right, but there's that little disc that shows me where I am. So I kind of like to verify that I'm in the right place before I start painting over things. And then, if you increase your like brush size, the disc will increase and you can really just get a sense for where you are. Okay, so yeah, I can see it. That's it. That's that gap right there. So I'm going to find where that gap first starts. And because we're going manually slice by slice now, I'm just going to fill in every part. So I'm just going to go right in here. And this part is pretty tedious, which is why I'm not going to spend too much time on it today, because it would kind of just be like me manually going through this and being like, look, I'm like drawing, and that kind of sucks. So yeah, and you can see it's kind of starting to fill in. It's looking like I might be going a little too crazy on it, so I'm actually going to dial it back a little bit. Let me undo some of what I'm doing, and I'm just going to go pretty close to this edge right here. Okay, so yeah, I'm just gonna keep going. I'm just gonna chug through. Again, this is one of those things where a lot of it will kind of just be trial and error, where you'll just kind of have to figure out like along the way what looks good and what doesn't. If they're like if you do this and you're like, hey, this looks like terrible, then I mean, again, I think that's like one of the good things about saving. So I guess if you're at this step and you want to edit things and you're like, hey, I'm not really sure if it's going to look good or bad, but I'll give it a shot, then I'd recommend just saving your STL beforehand and then going in and doing some of that manual editing, because you don't want to get in a position where you edit things and then it makes it look worse, because that sucks. And I mean, at the end of the day, I'm a firm believer that anything can be fixed with just like way too much smoothing. So, nothing that you should be like worried about necessarily, but just something to keep in mind maybe, if you're a little nervous about maybe going in manually, like especially for things like the heart that are a little more complex. Ooh, that looks bad. A little more complex that they might need like a little bit of a I guess like more accurate touch. Save along the way. It'll help you in the long run, for sure. So yeah, this looks pretty weird. If I'm being honest, I'm thinking maybe this gap like supposed to be there or something. I don't know. I'm gonna just complete it because why not? But really, just maybe save this step for some like glaring things that might look a little weird. And yeah, again, like I said, I gotta be honest, I've been skipping this step pretty frequently. When I do this, I've just been trusting Slicer to do me right when it comes to the anatomy. But okay, let's say I finish that and I'm like, ooh, looks like gills. Liver's got gills. That's weird. So let's say I finish that, and for whatever reason, I decide that I like that. Yay. So I would probably do like a final thing of smoothing, or maybe I'd apply another filter. Maybe I'll try an opening filter. Just put this at 4, and let's see what that does. For the final thing. Yeah, that smooths over some of the gills. There's still like a little bit of that gap there. I didn't really fix it as much as I'd hoped to, but again, not super important for this tutorial, as long as you know how to do it if you needed to. Okay, beautiful liver. Do you guys all have beautiful livers? Yes. All right. We love that. We love that. The human body is a crazy thing. All right. So now that we've got what we want, we're going to export this, and then we're going to kind of get started with the part of this where we're like, okay, how do we get it ready for 3D printing? And that part is pretty quick actually. So from here, I'm going to click this little arrow next to segmentations, and I'm going to click export to files. And here I can specify what file format I want, where I want it stored, the size scale. And for this tutorial, so I can show you a different feature in another tool, I'm actually going to scale this up to 2.5 times what it should be. But I recommend keeping this at 1 times the size scale, just because that way it's real size. I mean, I'm sure there might be applications where you'd want it to be either bigger or smaller, but you know, typically this will be 1. And then the rest, I'm gonna keep definitely keep visible segments only clicked. If you unclick this, then your other segment will also be exported, and it'll just be a giant box, and you'll be like, where's my liver? I only see a giant box, and it'll be because the liver's trapped inside the box and you can't see it, and that would suck. So okay, so yeah, gonna export that, and then you guys can see that I did this earlier at 3:46 p.m. So yeah, and then now we can go, and I'm gonna just open this with Microsoft 3D Viewer. And we can see, wow, that's our liver that we just segmented. That's crazy. Good job, guys. We did it. That's super exciting. We are awesome. Okay, so from here, now we're gonna just go into like how to get this ready for 3D printing. And this won't be like a comprehensive guide, but just in terms of using our 3D printer, just like what you'd need to actually load into the 3D printer. Because unfortunately, 3D printers don't really know what to do with just an STL, like an object file. They don't really know how to read that, at least not the ones that I've worked with. So we're going to want to convert. Also, I just realized, Zoom, are you guys able to see all of my screen, or are you only seeing Slicer right now?
Just Slicer.
I'm just gonna reshare my whole screen just in case. Okay. Cool. All right. So yeah, so we're gonna want to get our model into a file type called G code. And what that is it's literal code that the 3D printer will be able to read instead of just having this object file. So this is something that you know, you guys don't have to do on your end. This part will kind of just be like watching, because I didn't ask you guys to download this, but we're going to be using a program called Prusa Slicer, and this is specific to the brand of 3D printer that we have. But what this does is it is essentially a conversion tool from the STL file that we've made and the G code that we want our 3D printer to read. So this is super simple, nothing too crazy. We're just going to go to import STL. and then we're just gonna find this that we just made, and we're gonna open it up. Okay, so and now again, I made mine way too big so I could demonstrate one of the features in this. And it'll go, whoa, your print is like outside this area. Wouldn't it be funny if I tried to print this? So first thing we want to do is, I guess, for anyone who's not super familiar with how 3D printing works, the nozzle of the 3D printer will start at the bottom, and it's going to go it's going to slice up your 3D model into vertical layers, very similar to how Slicer works. And then it's going to just build up throughout the entire thing. So really, what's going to happen if, let's say I just left this here, and let's say it was like smaller, let's say it fit, but I left it floating. What would happen is the 3D printer would need to build material up and then start like assembling my my print. So in this step, it's really important that you try to minimize the, like, I guess, error when it comes to it being off the bed or outside the bed, especially outside the bed. Again, this part's super simple, but we're just going to use these tools on the left-hand side and kind of just go through this. So first off, I'm going to scale this. I made this super big on purpose to show you guys that you can just make this whatever size you want. So I'm just going to make it this. That's probably fine. And then I'm going to just try to move it into the center of the bed. And I'm going to want to center it. Okay, and then this part is pretty critical. So remember how I was saying it assembles it layer by layer, and it'll create support materials based on floating pieces. So right now, it would need to create support material throughout everything that's floating here so that it can support this. And the annoying thing about support material, especially depending on the filament that you're working with, it can be really, really annoying to get that support material off. I've actually hurt myself pretty bad trying to get support material off. And so it's something that you're going to want to minimize. And in every 3D print, you're going to likely have to have some support material. But trying to get it to be as little as possible is really important. So Prusa Slicer comes with a really nice tool that is this place on face tool. So if we select this, it'll show us the widest or most flat faces on our model, and we can select one to bring onto the bottom of the bed to kind of minimize that. So let's say I was to pick a really bad one, like this one on the back, and I were to orient it like that. That looks really stupid. So we definitely don't want to go with that. But if I were to choose this maybe larger one here on the bottom, we can see, all right, that looks pretty decent, you know, like it's a lot more flat. There aren't those floating, or there are some pieces that are still a little floating, like over here. That's definitely going to need support because when everything's hot and in like a liquid filament form, that's not going to stay upright if it starts. So it's going to need support there. But in general, I think this is pretty minimized. So I'm also just going to move it again, try to keep it as much to the center as you can. And now I want to see what it's going to look like with the support material filled in. So then I can just go to this preview here, and it's going to build it and pretty much just show me what it's going to look like right when it prints. So if we do that and it finishes up. Yeah, there we go. So you can see all that green stuff at the bottom. That is all of your support material. And that is the stuff that we want to try to minimize. Whoa. Okay. Yeah. And so you can remember me saying that, you know, this section of the liver is probably going to have quite a bit of support material. But ultimately, we're going to say this is okay. One more thing, I'm not going to go over this too much because if we ever do a 3D printer workshop, that might be more so for that. But the actual print settings are a pretty important part of this as well. Just like part of the G code when you export it is not just the layer specifications, but also just the like printer specifications when it comes to speed and quality. Like, yeah, like you guys can see, like the speed and quality, and you know how thick each layer is when it gets printed. Just all of those things are going to be incorporated into the print settings. And at least for the projects I've done, I've never had to set my own printer settings. For a lot of the things, for a lot of the filament that you buy, if you go online to the place that you bought the filament, a lot of them have pre-made printer settings for that specific filament. So, for example, I use an HT-PLA for Dicom kidney, and that is a high temperature PLA, meaning it needs to get way hotter than it does for just plastic because it's metal infused. And so the website that I got the filament from had these these Prusa settings pre-made that I could download and export into the G code. So just something to keep in mind that, you know, it'll be something that you just have to remember and look around for. And if it doesn't exist, then you'll have to do a lot of research on the filament you're using to figure out what temperature it needs to be, and just like, you know, different specifications. But for now, we're looking good. So I'm gonna say I'm happy with this. And then we can export the G code. And I'm just gonna save it to my desktop. And I'll call it just that. That's fine. So once I save that, I can open folder. Yeah. And then we can see that this G code that, you know, we can't really see this if we just click on it. And this is just going to be super quick. There's actually another program. Wow, I have so many things open called Prusa G Code Viewer. It's super similar. I feel like this step, you don't really have to do it because it'll pretty much just show you the same thing that you saw before. But this is good if you end up getting G code from like online, let's say, and you want to make sure that you're sending what you want to send to your 3D printer, then this is what you'd use to open it up. And here we see our liver exactly as we wanted it. And this is how we know that our printer is going to be reading this print correctly. So yeah, in terms of actually uploading it to the 3D printer, happens through SD card. You just, you know, put the SD card into your computer, put the file on the SD card, and the SD card into the printer, and then turn it on. And that's about it. So yeah, that's pretty much it for this workshop. One last thing that I'm kind of just going to leave off on before we call it a wrap. The skills that you learn in Slicer, they might seem like pretty specific to Slicer, but I wanted to just briefly share something that I found while doing just like some of my research. There's a tool called Free Surfer. If some of you guys maybe have heard of it, that is used for brain segmenting. And this is something that Slicer can do as well, but it's typically not really super useful for this. So my PI wanted me to learn how to segment brains, and I was like, oh boy, sure. And he told me about this tool, and the first thing that I saw when I opened it is I was like, wow, this is exactly like Slicer. Like, it is very, very similar. So I will say, you know, if you were ever using some sort of slicing tool for CT scans, or this one uses fMRI scans, it's pretty similar. I'd say the skills are pretty transferable. And so, yeah, it's a good skill to have. And I would definitely recommend just, you know, practicing on different body parts as well. It can be a lot of fun just to like see what you can pick out and just try. Yeah, what's up? That's a great question. You know, I don't actually know. I might just look it up. Hold on. Can you open MRI scans in 3D Slicer? That's a great question. I guess Slicer DMRI. It looks like they might have like an extra library or part of it. Sweet. Nice. Yeah. So yeah, I guess it is super useful for that too. Yeah, cool. Yeah, for sure. Great question. Okay. And with that, I'm gonna say that's all I got for y'all. I hope you guys were able to follow along. If there are any questions, you know, feel free to ask them. Also, if you're online or in person, don't forget to like take a picture of just anything for your point when you submit it, so that you can get credit for that. And yeah, that's all I got. Thank you guys for coming. Yes, absolutely. Yeah, for sure, for sure. Okay. Yeah. Oh, fair enough. Let me stop the recording super quick, sorry. Okay, I'm gonna end this by y'all.